Okay, I'll call the meeting to order then. I'll begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory in the traditional homeland of Métis Nation. All individuals entering the city-operated facilities, including City Hall, are required to wear a non-medical face mask. Those at the table are not required to wear masks while sitting, as long as they distance 6 feet from anyone else. Once you leave your seat at the table, you must put your mask back on. As directed by Manitoba Health, we're requesting people avoid close contact within 2 meters with anyone showing symptoms of a respiratory illness, such as coughing or sneezing. If you're experiencing flu-like symptoms, we're requesting that you excuse yourself from the room. My name is Neil Harden. I am chairing today's panel. With me is Brent McIntyre to my left and Lynn Nisbet to my far left. The assessor today is Michael Taylor, but via Zoom. And the recording secretary is Cara Belshaw. We will be hearing applications for revision of assessment role in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it in the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order to be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions the applicant may have, then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You'll receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live stream recorded and will be part of the public record. The use of cell phones is not permitted except with the approval of the chair. All right, so we have one property on today's agenda, business assessment for 2019 and then 2020. The property is 555 Sterling Lion, Unit 369. So can you swear them in?
So good morning, Mr. Assessor. Can you please state your name for the record?
Mike Taylor.
Do you affirm the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And Madam Applicants, for the record, please state your name.
Sylvia Bach.
Do you affirm the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll swear you in.
Sure.
Your name, please.
Lila Bach Freeman.
Do you affirm the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so as I said, we have Unit 369 555 Sterling Lion Parkway, the business assessment for 2019. You can proceed, Mr. Taylor.
So you're looking at 2019 to start?
2019 to start, yeah.
Sure. Okay, so we're looking at an annual rental value under appeal today of $237,780. It's a 6,888 square foot rental unit. Like you said before, it's Unit 369 there at the Outlet Mall. There's some maps and diagrams on the 2020 brief just to show you location-wise, if you guys are curious. Essentially for Unit 369 for 2019, that premise area of 6,888 square feet is applied a model generated rent of $32.17 a square foot plus the cost of occupancy for the entire unit, which gets to that annual rental value calculation The subject lease information below was based off of the previous tenant, which was similar in use to the current tenant. They paid $20 a square foot plus 6% of their gross sales. At least that's what was reported to the city. The current rent for the current tenant is not known. All I know is that they pay a 5% gross sales. At least that's what's reported. Then just some rent comparables there below. They're all from the Outlet Mall, from Seasons of Tuxedo. Fairly familiar with the property. Been on site many times. Did the realty valuation when it went from scratch. So generally, the rents range from a low of $27.50 there up to a high of $50 a square foot. Thank you.
Okay, do you have any questions of the assessor?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Where should I look? To look at him? Just there is fine?
Yeah, well,
Is there a
yeah, you can
camera?
look at him, it doesn't matter.
Okay. Did you look at any of the corner units or the Saxton Avenue unit? I think they're in our brief. They're units A, B, C, D, and E, I believe.
Did I look at those ones? I included your rental comparables that don't have any percentage rent clauses. Most of the corner units do have those clauses in their lease.
What was that? I had trouble hearing you.
I said that those corner units you're referencing, most of them have percentage rent clauses, and they're larger than the subject unit that we're looking at.
So the percentage rent clause, we have one of those as well. So how does that affect the assessment of the property?
Well, the assessment of the property would be based off fair market rent. We wouldn't be looking at percentage rents.
So if we have one of those, then that would be comparable to the corner units?
If you have one of those, I wouldn't use yours as a comparable. I have the previous tenant here just for sake of illustration to the board today.
I noticed in your information, it talks about the lease terms for all of the units. How we have a 60-day termination clause. The mall can terminate us at any point. What is the relevance of including the lease term on the docket here on your package?
Which one are you talking about?
Every single unit you've listed.
Okay, well, that is for 2020. I don't know, Mr. Chairman, you want me to go into the stuff? I mean, it's really applicable to both 2019 and 2020.
Answer as you see fit.
Okay. So lease terms are you talking about? Like the second page there where most of the tenants are blacked out?
No, I'm talking here on your form here, your assessment taxation department. I'm looking at 2019 and 2020. Next to every unit you've listed as a comparable, you have the lease term.
Yep.
What's the relevance of including that?
Those are usually included for comparable rents.
So if the lease is vastly incomparable to that, would that make an impact?
Well, if you guys are a month-to-month tenant, as you're alleging right now, that's your evidence, I guess. The previous tenant had a 10-year lease on it, and most tenants there at the mall have 10-year leases.
So what's the relevance of including the lease terms?
We always put that in there for information for the panel.
What's that, sorry?
Sometimes it can vary. It can be month-to-month. It can be 10 years. It can be 5 years.
So it has zero impact on the assessment value?
Well, no, it's just, again, for information purposes to show that there is a 10-year lease at that rate.
So then the lease term is relevant to the assessment value?
I guess so. In establishing fair market rent, you'd want to have a lease term that's more than month-to-month.
So can you explain to me what the percentage sales clause is?
For your lease,
No, for the leases on the other units in the mall.
I haven't seen the other leases in the mall.
Well, you,
All I know is what's listed on my brief right there.
so do the rest of the units in the mall have that clause?
No. Again, what's listed there, there are some tenancies at the outlet mall that have a percentage rent clause. All that's listed is the number of percent that they pay on top of the rent also that they pay.
So how does that impact the assessed value? How does that differentiate it from a lease without a percentage rent clause?
Those units are still assessed at fair market rents, just like the subject.
So then the percentage rent clause doesn't impact the assessed value?
That's correct.
Okay. So you stated earlier that the corner units were not comparable because they had a percentage rent clause?
Yep. I said I did not use them as comparables.
Oh, not that they're not comparable, just that you didn't include them.
That's correct.
Okay. So then they would be comparable because they are in the same mall at the same location.
Yeah, and I think I said lots of them are larger than the subject.
In a mall context, do you see an entrance or exit from a specific unit to the parking lot for public access? Does that impact the rental value of a property?
Not specifically, no.
For example, like if you had the Saks Fifth Avenue, it has a entrance to the mall. So that's one of their main entrance to the whole mall is through the Saks Fifth Avenue.
Correct.
So that has no impact on the value, no of the assessment value?
Nope, not the assessment value.
There is some information that's inconsistent here in this package that you gave us. I see that here you have the area for the rental unit as 6,888 square feet.
Yep.
And here we have on the map that you've given us at 6,862. Is there a reason for that differentiation?
The map that I've included there was when they were building the site.
So you don't have any information showing that it's 6,888?
I do. Didn't I include the rent roll where it says 6,888?
No,
Yeah.
no, on the map it says 6,862.
Well, like I explained already, that was a site plan for when they were constructing the whole mall. And the units did change in size since then, and there have been new plans that have been issued since then as well.
And those new plans weren't included then?
No, I just put this in for illustration purposes.
Okay, I think I have no further questions, unless you do, Sylvia.
Not at the moment, thank you.
Okay, Lynn, do you have any questions of the assessor?
Yes, I do. So the applicant has referred to different types of leases at the mall. You've only included one type. What is the, or do you even know, split in the types of leases at the mall? Like the rent plus or straight rent or?
The majority of them would be the straight rent, like I've included here, and I've really tried to focus on one similar in size to the subject property or the subject one we're looking at. There's smaller and bigger units there as well. But there are a larger amount of percentage rent tenants at the outlet mall as well. I mean, it's very commonplace for a new mall like this type to have that, to have the percentage rent tenants in there.
But you chose not to include any because?
Percentage rents?
Yeah.
That's I would never include percentage rents because I don't know. They would have to tell me what their sales are and let me see the lease, which doesn't really happen. I mean,
That information just couldn't be available to you.
I feel like, well, just asking for leases in general as an assessor, you don't get a lot of them, let alone asking for their sales information.
Right, okay. So they might be better comparables, but they're not available. That information.
Well, I wouldn't say there'd be better comparables. It just, when we have to do so many different assessments here, with all due respect, you don't have time to chase after everyone to look for their sales information on top of looking at all their lease information as well.
Do the percentage rents tend to be larger or smaller premises?
Sorry, I'm having a hard time. Can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, do the percentage rent leases tend to be larger or smaller premises?
Well, they're very common to what you see there that I put in. Like the previous tenant had the $21 a square foot,
Right.
which falls below the range that I've got there. So really the 6% will boost them up a little bit to be closer to market rent. But again, without knowing how much they sold or any of that stuff, there's no way of telling exactly what it is.
Okay. All right, I appreciate your answer, thank you.
Brent?
My question is, all of these are 10-year and 11-year leases.
Hmm.
The original tenant was 10 years. What happened to them? The mall's only, what, 3 years old?
Yeah, the original tenant that was there was another furniture store like the current tenant. It was that Bombay furniture store. You might see at some other malls and stuff. From our records, they declared bankruptcy, and I'm not sure what happened with their lease or what happened in terms of their company, but they vacated not long after the mall opened.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Now on these, however many you got, 10 or so comparable leases. Are there some better locations and some worse locations? And if so, can you point out the better locations?
Better locations, like these are all within the mall. So,
Yeah. Would there be better locations to have a store within that mall as compared to some other locations, hidden in the interior versus visible on the entrance or exit routes?
I mean, it depends. That would be specific to each business. I mean, if you want to have a store close to a competitive store or competitor store, you'd want to be close to those. But I mean, if you want to be a food court tenant, you'd obviously want to be by the food court. But all these comparables that I've included here today, none of them really would be influenced that way.
Okay, what about proximity to, say, an anchor tenant? Would that typically attract a somewhat higher rent?
It would, but the outlet mall really was built to not have anchors like the Nike store and Winners that's right across from the subject we're looking at today. They're all kind of smaller, almost like sub-anchor tenants. They're not your typical Hudson's Bay giant store,
Yeah.
box retail store.
All right, thank you for that. You can proceed with your presentation then.
Okay, well, I can see according to these comparables. Or do you want to say something? Do I start?
It doesn't have to be a question?
No, now we're doing our presentation.
Oh, okay. I probably don't want to speak too much, but I wouldn't mind saying that a few things. First of all, we do have a completely different type of lease that hasn't really been mentioned here. In fact, we don't have a lease. We have a license. So we can be kicked out in 60 days. And currently, we only have 4 months until the end of December because we're trying to find out if we can afford to stay because of the rate of the taxes. We're also not similar.
We've included the relevant part of our temporary occupancy agreement, license agreement, page 26 of our package. So this shows that it is not a lease, but a license, which is more akin to a pop-up shop. And the purpose of this type of license is to create a mall with more stores occupied to attract the right clientele. Currently, there are not enough anchor tenants and multinational corporations to move into all of the locations of the mall. And so Ivanhoe Cambridge has made an effort to find specific businesses within Winnipeg, local businesses, to occupy the empty spaces and give them a different type of agreement that makes it more attractive for them, makes the pricing more attractive, and makes it possible for them to move into the mall and to help the mall to be more attractive to the larger corporations and to help the local community as well. And so at any point during our license, we do not have the right to terminate, but Ivanhoe Cambridge has the right to terminate within 60 days notice for the purpose of allowing larger businesses to move in with the full-time, more akin to a 10-year lease. So really the Ivanhoe Cambridge has a very innovative approach to filling the mall in order to create a thriving mall where there are more businesses and more occupancies in the mall. And so on page 26, it shows that the right to terminate within 60 days. And we do not have the same right. And it's not a lease at all, but it's a license.
The other thing that I would like to point out is what happened to the other tenant. So the other tenant is not like us. The other tenant was a multinational, huge corporation that couldn't make the rent. So retail is struggling. It's really a hard go for even the biggest companies in North America to make it. So the previous company was Bombay and Company, and they completely went bankrupt right across the country. So the environment is really difficult and really hard. And even the biggest companies are folding. And so that's the reason why Ivanhoe Cambridge came up with the kind of solutions that they've come up with to try to fill their unfillable spaces. They're not fillable necessarily with what we traditionally think of as fair market value, because market is very unstable right now. And it has been for quite a number of years for retail. So it's not like it's just the COVID, which has certainly really put a wrench into everything, but it was before that already. So everyone is struggling. So in the mall, there are two other local businesses. There's Hush and Portionella. And they're also in there, and they have taken the opportunity to go into the mall as well.
There's a lot more than just that, but we included 2 photos of those other licenses.
Right, and we were approached to go into that mall, and they asked us if we wanted to. And at the time, we were still on Pacific Avenue by Waterfront, an area that we really loved. But the truth is, it was difficult for us to get people to come into that area. Most of our customers tend to live more in the South End, and it seemed to be a good idea to go back to where our original roots were, which was Gordon Avenue for 21 years. So we've been able to tap into our old clients, which is really good for us. And then we made the move. We thought we would continue doing both stores, but it just didn't seem like we had enough funds to be able to do both stores at the same time. And we didn't know whether it was actually worth it to keep the store on Pacific Avenue, because things were changing on Pacific and the parking rates were going up, and the difficulties with the downtown were getting more and more complicated, and our clients were less desiring to come downtown. And even some of them would come down and phone and say, we tried to come, there was no parking, we turned around and went home. So we felt like we were pushed out of downtown. We didn't want to leave. I don't know if any of you have been to our old store on Pacific, but it's the old Canadian Costume Museum. It was spectacular. We loved it. was beautiful. Really wonderful building, great architecture, wonderful to be downtown we want to be part of the revitalization of the whole exchange and downtown, but it quite frankly was going the other way. So we couldn't really exist doing things the way we were doing it. So after 7 years, when the opportunity come up to go into the mall at a license kind of a situation at rent that we could afford, and that was almost exactly what we were paying on Pacific came up, then it made sense for us to make the move. And it is really scary being in a business where you don't have any rug under your feet, because at any moment that rug could be pulled out from under your feet. So it's not great, and it's not easy. And then to be charged the same kind of rent as a multinational who couldn't make it in that space. So fair market value, not if they can't make it, it's not fair market value. And that's for a lease. And we're not in the same position. We're local, and we're trying to continue to be local, but we have to be treated, I think, more fairly, or I think we should be treated specially because we are local. Otherwise the mall is just another Polo Park or another St. Vital Center, which are great, but they don't have anything very unique. And I think part of the success that is happening in our mall is the fact that they do have some of the local businesses. And I think that we need to be treated the way we were when we were on Pacific, because our taxes are now how much more? 4 times as much, our business taxes when we were on Pacific. And that's just not doable for us.
Yeah, the rent on Pacific was $4,200 a month, and the rent we have at the outlet collection is $4,500 a month. And our taxes on the previous location were $1,518. We have both of those numbers in our package. I can just refer to the page. Our previous taxes, business taxes, were $1,518 a year. And now I think they're about 10,000. They're included somewhere in here. We have the amount we're paying on page 25, and it shows that even with a temporary license, we were only able to sign a 4-month extension, so that still we can be kicked out within 60 days at any point, but our commitment is only for 4 months to ensure that we can continue to be there and have a profitable business. And part of that was to determine the percentage of tax that we would be required to pay. And like Sylvia said, it's very difficult to be a furniture store in a location where you might have to move really at the drop of a hat. Moving a furniture store is an exceptionally difficult task, as you can imagine. And not just any location will work. It's not like clothing where you can fold it up and store it easily somewhere. Our previous taxes are on page 28, and it shows that was for our 109 Pacific Avenue rent. On page 29, you can see that we're comparing our pricing per month to our taxes per year. So we're paying a very similar rate in rent per month, and yet our taxes have gone up more than 4 times. Okay, and we also have quite a few locations in the mall that we would like to discuss, and the price per square footage, as well as other places on Sterling Lion and Kenniston Avenue. So IKEA is another furniture store, not really comparable to us, but I think the city has also put in a lot of money to make that property very valuable. They have left turn lights going directly into the parking lot for the one single business, and they're paying $12 per square foot, whereas Blue Moon is paying $28 according to the assessment value per square foot. So that's less than half. They're valued at less than half. I don't know if it's because they're a multinational corporation, but it's significantly lower. Cabela's is across the street. It is also a standalone business, and they are paying $17.84 a square foot. Also, if anyone wants to refer to this, I'm looking at page 5. I also have each of the tax assessments from the tax assessment website so that you can see where I got these numbers from. And I've done just a square foot division so you could see per square foot how much they're paying. So Old Navy, that is in a similar spot to us. It's beside a corner unit. We have a map of the mall as well. I think that's let's see. Page 6. So you can see on the other end of the mall, they're a side unit the way we are, and they are paying $17.74 a square foot. And again, we're paying $28 a square foot, $28.27 a square foot. Saks is a large unit, and I think my thinking on the assessment value is that having an entrance into your unit as an entrance to the mall means that a huge percentage of people, whether they want to visit your store or not, are coming to your store and have a better chance of seeing your products and have a better chance of purchasing. So I think that absolutely increases the assessment value per square foot. And Saks Fifth Avenue is paying $16.85 a square foot. DSW, Designer Shoe Warehouse, it's the B unit in Outlet Collection. They are paying $17.56 a square foot. Winners, who is right beside us, they are paying $17.30 a square unit. Nike, which is another store in the mall, is paying $17.76 a square unit. We also have Audi, which shares a similar parking lot and is, I think, a similar address. It's right next to the Outlet Collection. They're paying $17.71 a square foot. Mercedes, another very beautiful brand new building on Kenniston, it's 1400 Kenniston. They're paying $15.19 a square foot. West Coast Kids, another new build in a strip mall on Kenniston Avenue, 1219 Kenniston. They're paying $11.28 a square foot. Lux Barbecue, they're in that same unit on Kenniston. They're paying $11.16 a square foot. Trans Canada Brewing on Kenniston Avenue, they're paying $10.82 a square foot. So obviously, just because we're in the mall doesn't mean that the only comparables are the mall prices that are more expensive than ours. I haven't checked all of the pricing for all of the mall, but we have Old Navy, Saks, DSW, Winners, and Nike. That's 5 multinational corporations in the mall, all paying significantly less per square foot than we are. And again, I have a page with the tax assessment for each one of those units. Here from the mall on page 23, we have a letter from the Specialty Leasing and Partnerships manager from Ivanhoe Cambridge explaining what a specialty lease is and what a short-term temporary license agreement is and the purpose that they have this program. And it's page 23. I'm not sure if I mentioned that, if anyone wants to refer to it.
It's completely different than a regular lease. I don't think that we should be compared to a regular lease of a multinational company. I personally feel hurt and insulted that we should pay more than IKEA for rent. It's really hard to take, or not for rent, but for taxes
or Nike
on a lease. So clearly, does the city really think IKEA, Nike, and all the rest of them are so much more valuable than the locals, really? Because, I mean, I understand they bring jobs, but we would bring jobs too if we weren't hammered every time we turned around. But, you know, it's really tough. It's tough. It's tough to be treated that unfairly.
And the purpose of it is to increase the variety of the retail selections and spaces available to people within the mall. And the point really is to make outlet collection a specific destination. It's not just going to a mall, but it's going to outlet collection because they are able to offer something different. They're able to offer, yes, all of the big companies that everybody knows and loves and is going for, but also some interesting and more unique businesses. So there's a reason to go to outlet collection over St. Vital, over Portage Place, over Polo Park. So they're making a great effort to make it a vibrant community for the locals, for the local business owners, and for the local consumers. And we think that that's worth noting. And then on page 24, this is our extension agreement for our license. And we were offered a year license agreement extension, but we had to request a shorter term license agreement because, as I said, the license agreement is a commitment on our side, but not a commitment from the mall, because at any point they can terminate within 60 days, whereas we cannot. So in the current climate where retail is being shut down, as well as the uncertainty with taxes and the future of retail, we were unable to make that commitment for another year because we're not sure how viable it is and whether the city is willing to acknowledge that there are reasons that this specific location with this lease should be treated as some of the other locations in the mall at much lower rates. On page 25, we show how much we're actually paying. So there we have documents showing that it is a license and the actual fee. And it is market value, otherwise at any point we could be kicked out for someone who does want to sign a 10-year lease, but there aren't any big companies right now that want that. So it could sit empty or it could be occupied temporarily by a business that can thrive in the city. And this is on page 27, we have an image of our space, and it shows that there is nothing specific about this space that makes it more exceptional than the other locations and more valuable than the other locations in the mall. It's very basic, it's an open space, it has doors entering, and what makes it interesting and unique is our furniture, and that has nothing to do with the rental value or the assessment value. It's just a typical location in the mall.
Right. So in the last little a few pages, we have some of the companies that were in the exchange with us. So they were also local furniture companies. So Hooper's left the exchange about a year and a half ago, and they've moved to the Polo Park area. They're now on Ellis Avenue by St. James. Art Upholstery has moved to the St. James area around Silver City, and they were in the exchange area too about a year and a half ago. Pat K has moved to Grant Avenue, close to Keniston, and they left about a year and a half ago. Rick's Fine Furniture, the parents passed away. Marcia tried to keep going in the exchange, but she left about a year ago. And the only furniture store left now is Interior Illusions, and they are in Princess. So out of a group of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and us 6, only one's left in the exchange. So we feel forced out, and now we're feeling like we're getting forced out of the mall.
It's the assessor said that the reason he left, the comparable units in the mall off of his comparison sheet where, because of the percentage rent clause, we also have that. If we meet specific sales target, we are required to pay a percentage of our sales on top of our base rent, which is the $4,500 that we showed you in, I think it was page 20 something. So we also have a percentage rent clause. I didn't know that that was something that we should include in our package, but we do have that. So there's no reason then for the units that I mentioned, the 7 units, to be left off of the comparable units list. And they are all paying within the $17 range per square foot on their units. So it's our submission that we do not have to be paying $28 a square foot on our unit, wherein other locations in the mall are not paying that price on their units.
And I want to say that the comparables were all full leases, so they were not actually comparables to what we have. So there are no comparables. There was no comparables presented.
And even with the full term lease, many locations are paying significantly less than we are per square foot.
When we were on Corydon Avenue for 21 years, our business tax was around $1,500 a month. So it was very reasonable, and it was a non-issue for us. It was no problem. And when we were on Pacific, it was no problem. Now it's a problem.
Okay, is there anything else you'd like to, what rental value are you suggesting for your property?
Well, we would like to be treated as well as IKEA, which is why we included them. So they're paying, let me just get to the page where I have the breakdown. I think it's page 5. They're paying $1,207 a square foot. That's what they're assessed at.
But they're
not in the mall.
They have, I don't know, 100,000 square feet or more.
Yes, they have, almost 400,000 square feet. They're significantly bigger. That's what we would like, and that's why we've included that. If you feel that that is not an accurate comparable, we would like to be treated the same as Old Navy, Saks, Fifth Avenue, DSW, and Winners and Nike in the mall that are all paying. Saks is actually paying less than $17 a square foot. And we think that at minimum, we should be paying the lower prices that other companies are getting within that mall.
Well, Leila, I'm sorry, but I have to disagree with
Okay.
you. Leila and I haven't actually discussed this point, and I don't agree that we should be paying as much as any of the people who have a full lease. We only have a temporary license, so I don't think that we're in the same category as Saks or Nike or any of the other ones. So I don't think we should be paying anywhere near their kind of taxes. I think that we should be paying a local type of tax that we were paying in the past and be assessed in that way. So have you got our?
I agree. Okay. Yes, we have our old tax assessment, and that was on page 28. And that shows an annual business tax of $1,518.
I think that's reasonable.
Right, but we don't determine the tax, we determine the assessment.
Okay, so then the assessment.
That's right. So then the assessment value from that previous property was $28,920.
Okay, is that your presentation?
In closing, if we are closing, I just want to say thank you very much to the
Well,
panel.
the city's got their chance to ask questions.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay, Mr. Taylor, do you have any questions?
Just since you didn't interject there, Mr. Chairman, about page 5 and the comparable assessments that were used by the applicant. I just want to point out that you can't really, you guys didn't point to which years these assessments were for.
Just yesterday, I pulled these.
No, but what year is it? Is it 2020 assessed values? Is it 2019? I mean, we're looking at 2019.
So the assessed values available from the city's website yesterday. So I'm not sure how they assess or what information is provided to the public, but this is what we pulled yesterday.
So these are 2020 values, or are they 2019 values is what I'm asking?
This is the most current information available from the city.
Regardless of that, again, Mr. Chairman, I was hoping you would kind of instruct them that we don't compare assessments at the Board of Revision. Lots of these assessment comparables they've provided here have been appealed to the Board of Revision and have municipal board appeals pending. And there's municipal board decisions on why we don't compare assessments. So I don't know if you want to explain it a little bit more.
That was included in the preamble that I said, but there is indeed a court decision that says you can't compare assessments of properties because you're not sure whether the other property is properly assessed or not. Basically, it's the
This is the bulk of what the assessor provided as well, was comparable properties. And it said nowhere on the website or the information provided that that's not how the assessments are done. We did find that the assessments that the
Sorry, I just want to interrupt just for a second. What I've provided here are comparable lease amounts from the leases they've provided. What you guys have on page 5 is taken from the assessments.
These are not comparable leases. We don't have a lease.
Yeah, I understand that, but your comparables should be leases, not assessed values, is what we're trying to explain.
We don't have a lease, so that's not comparable. And nor is it public information. Other people's licenses aren't public information, so there's no way for us to access that. So then there's no way for us to provide any information to show any relevant assessment values.
Any other questions, Mr. Taylor?
No, that's it.
Okay, Brent, any questions?
Just one, your previous location on Pacific, what was the size of the leasable area that?
It was about 6,000 square feet on the main floor. We also had a mezzanine area on the second floor. And the second floor was about 1,000 square feet, so about 7. It was very similar, yeah.
Now, your license agreement, you have letters on file. Is there another agreement that stipulates you have to pay business tax or property tax?
No, I don't think so. And in fact, that's why I was so shocked when we got our bill.
So in fact, the landlord is not, normally in a mall like this, the landlord apportions some of the realty tax to the tenant side.
Okay, well, Leela's just checking on that now.
One of the stipulations in our license agreement is that we're not supposed to provide that information to anybody else. That is confidential, which is why we only showed that it is a license agreement and that we can terminate within 60 days because we thought those were very pertinent.
Yeah, we aren't supposed to be discussing
Well,
that,
then
sorry.
you shouldn't provide that because this is
I'm
live
sorry.
stream.
Oh my gosh, well then, like
Well,
I said,
we talked to them all about this and they said that was okay and they provided the letter talking about it.
yeah,
I think they don't want us to
they didn't want to provide anything further than that. And then I'm sorry that I said something because I'm not even sure about it. I would have to look into.
That's
what
why I
that
bring this up.
license
I
is.
know that there is a clause in
No,
our license about it, but I'm not sure what it says.
Yeah, that's fine. No further questions.
Okay, Ben, any questions? I've got a question specifically on your page 26. You have as I understand it, a base of 4,500. So you pay that every month, no matter what your sales.
Yes. Sorry, which page? 26?
26 or 25 rather.
Oh,
sorry.
okay. Yes.
And typically then, if your sales go above 90,000, you pay 5% of your sales above 90,000.
That's correct.
And typically, what does that amount to?
0. We've never reached that target, although we hope to be forced to pay that fee. That's the one fee we're looking forward to paying.
Okay, so they've never activated that.
That's correct. And then that's why we also pay 4,500 because that's 5% of 90,000. So I can't remember the terminology they used, but they had a calculation for the break point and how much your gross fees are. So our gross fee of $4,500 is 5% of our break point, and that's what they're also hoping that we will be able to make on a monthly basis. And that's why our rent is at that. And we haven't reached that yet, although the mall has told us that we are an extremely strong licensed tenant for them that does generate a lot of income.
Okay, and do you pay heat, light, air conditioning on your own?
No.
So the mall pays that out of the $4,500 a month. Okay, and when did you move in there?
June 1st, 2019.
Okay, so that's why we got 19 and 20.
Yes.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. And you would request the same value for both years then?
Yes.
All right. Thank you for that. Then, Mr. Taylor, you can go on to your 2020 evaluation then.
You want me just to explain it, or I feel like the appellant's ask is the same. We're looking at the same factors, really. Just the model rent's different. And the
Yeah,
cost.
it just was different from 2019.
Do you want file numbers or anything too, or are you just?
Yeah, we need that. We need the tombstone data.
Okay. So before we switch out, so for 2019, the file number is 20-567. For business assessment roll number of 54925. For 2020, the file number is 20-568. Same business roll number, 54925. The annual rental value under appeal for 2020 is $194,700. And based on all the same factors, except for the model rent is $25.82 a square foot. And the occupancy costs are a bit different to get to that $194,700.
I didn't catch what you said last.
Sorry, I said the occupancy costs are different for the reassessment in 2020. But then they add up to that, they're applied again to that $6,888 to get to that annual rental value of $194,700.
Okay. Do you have any questions on the 2020 valuation?
Was there a specific reason why the previous tenant was paying $21 a square foot? Why it went up when we took over?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
The reported rent per square foot.
Yeah, that's what they were paying.
Is this information, the lease information, available to publicly?
Lease information, when you stated before, you can't get that publicly. You can get some of this publicly. Any of these materials that are entered for evidence here, you can get as public information. So for future information, to get your comparables, you might want to look at previous or hearing materials.
I thought it was my understanding that that the assessment value wasn't actually based on what tenants were paying.
It's not. That's just there for information for $21.
Do you think the assessments will be going down at all because of the COVID?
I have no idea.
It certainly impacted the retail businesses, especially when they're closed down and only open certain smaller hours.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, Brent, any questions of the assessor on 2020?
Just one question, Michael. Why is the base ARV per square foot $25.82 for 2020 and $32.17 for 2019?
Why is there a difference between 19 and 20?
Yeah.
Somebody in 2020 thought they would change the quality on this property from, and that was their subjective opinion, which brought the rent from the $30 range down to the $25 range.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question.
Okay, Lynn, any questions?
Yeah, that was my question too. Yeah.
Okay,
That's okay.
and now, is there anything that you wish to add on your presentation for 2020? Everything you said on the 2019 value will be considered in the 2020 value as well.
No, I don't think so.
All right, thank you very much. Then that concludes this morning's hearing. So we will deliberate and get back to you as soon as we can. It shouldn't be too long.